hardly anyone is talking about this right now. But as the old saying goes eventually, the truth rises to the top when we start uncovering the deep corruption and match fixing in global soccer. And that is exactly what is happening after the 2026 tournament. No matter how much the Argentines bark, or how hard those brainless Messi fanboys scream to defend him like he is some kind of holy god, this is a player who has simply become the face of a terrible shift in the sport, slowly turning the beautiful game into a highly commercialized NFL-style entertainment show. Honestly, we need to expose where this creeping darkness is heading, as it slowly drags traditional soccer down into the shadows with it. And no, it is not just about the millions pouring straight into Gianni Infantino bank accounts. It is about a massive corporate system designed to slowly push out and destroy the traditional soccer fan forever. To start, the hidden connection has finally been exposed, revealing exactly why FIFA desperately wanted Messi to win a second World Cup title, a massive payday that Spain managed to ruin on the pitch. Because right now, Gianni Infantino, driven by an obsession with absolute power and owning the tournament forever, is actively trying to privatize the entire competition. You heard that right, he wants it privatized. But the real issue is that his partners are not just anyone, and that is where the link to Messi and Argentina comes in. The whole thing is far more sinister than you might think. Because this entire plan to transform FIFA into a massive corporate machine goes way beyond bringing families together or putting smiles on the faces of the fans. Despite what Infantino claimed to his critics in a public statement instead, this is heading straight toward the complete manipulation of global soccer fans. So, who is actually involved in this FIFA corruption, Messi, and the total privatization of the World Cup? I will give you two clues. A company owned by Donald Trump's son-in-law brother and JP Morgan. Yes, the bank that has practically bought out Argentina. This is why it makes perfect sense that FIFA wanted Messi to be a back-to-back world champion. Because beyond just having a star lift the trophy, they needed to prove that soccer is incredibly profitable and can generate massive returns in a very short time, turning the game into a machine that makes billions of dollars for American businessmen, directly feeding off the intense passion of fans across the globe, and instead, showing it can be the ultimate weapon for total global influence. That is why we are looking at the evidence behind this messy corruption. Infantino, FIFA, and privatizing the tournament. Prepare yourself, because eventually the truth was always bound to come out one way or another. That is why all the filth finally surfaced right after the tournament. Millions of fans were not wrong. The world was not naive, realizing that FIFA was planning a daylight robbery right at the World Cup. They wanted Messi to win back-to-back titles. But how much would FIFA have actually gained from seeing him lift that trophy? No, it was not about cash. They wanted something else. The money was already secured in their pockets through overpriced tickets and their aggressive push into the American market, turning soccer into a US show. It is no coincidence that Infantino had practically become a permanent resident at the White House for several months leading up to this. He was chasing something far bigger than money, raw power. In fact, reports recently revealed that Donald Trump had actually proposed Infantino as the next Secretary General of the United Nations, where it is now up to the General Assembly and Security Council to approve it, handing even more influence to this bald schemer Infantino, because power corrupts, and power is what usually puts winners on the podium. Do you not believe me? Let us look at a very clear example that tied directly into this right before the round of 16 match between the United States and Belgium. Infantino, working through his FIFA disciplinary committee, suddenly overturned a red card for Florian Balogun so he would be cleared to play in that match. They essentially made up a loophole, justifying it under Article 27 of their own code, which claims that disciplinary suspensions can actually be lifted during a trial period, just to see if the player shows genuine reform. That had never been done in World Cup history. So the American player took the field despite fierce protests from UEFA, Belgium, and millions of outraged fans, who grew even more furious when Donald Trump himself admitted he had personally spoken directly with FIFA to get his star player suspension overturned. It was completely absurd, but it perfectly exposed Infantino's shameless agenda, who has now become a deeply hated figure across the soccer world, a direct result of backroom political favors traded between these two powerful men. What they sold as a celebration of sports was simply the ruthless exploitation of a highly lucrative business, because behind the game lies real power. And you might be wondering, well, if Infantino cannot become a billionaire at FIFA, why on earth would he want to be the Secretary General of the United Nations? It is pretty simple. Donald Trump has run into some major roadblocks recently when trying to pull off his usual political stunts, and that is mostly thanks to the United Nations, who have publicly called him out several times, something he absolutely hates. Infantino would just be a puppet in that scenario, but we can save that debate for later. It is all about craving power. Because of this, Lionel Messi and Argentina had a smooth, easy run through the World Cup. In fact, that favoritism is not just a theory anymore, it is officially confirmed. Just a few hours ago, IFAB, the official governing body of soccer rules worldwide, explained that the second yellow and subsequent red card shown to Breel Embolo, the Swiss star, was a massive refereeing mistake in those quarterfinals. This major scandal was initially swept under the rug during the game, but it exploded back to life after the governing body admitted the rule was misapplied. They ruled Embolo had actually simulated the foul, and remember, he already had a yellow. The organization clarified that the VAR protocol only allows reviews for cases of mistaken identity, meaning they can only identify which player to book, not completely change the foul call to punish another player with a brand new card. So, they should have used the video review only to confirm that Argentine midfielder Leandro Paredes did not deserve a card since he was booked initially. The rule states they could only use the video replay for that specific correction, not to completely overturn the call and issue a brand new yellow card that directly benefited Argentina. So, the referee did not just cancel Paredes' card, he totally changed his mind and booked the Swiss forward instead. By the book, he should have only taken back the Argentine yellow card and let Argentina restart play with the ball. But instead, FIFA and their referees bent the rules out of convenience, abusing a video review system that should have stayed silent, and that little assist tilted the scale to help Argentina win the match. Interestingly enough, the Swiss dismissal happened at the worst possible moment for their squad. Right after Dan Ndoye equalized in the 67th minute, Embolo was sent off in the 72nd just 5 minutes later, leaving Switzerland with 10 men against a relentless Argentina. These official statements have truly opened Pandora's box, revealing exactly how FIFA seemed absolutely determined to push Argentina all the way to the final. But if it was not about money, why was an Argentina back-to-back championship so crucial, aside from Infantino chasing absolute power? Well, brace yourself for what comes next, because it gets incredibly dark, exposing a massive web of corruption designed to reshape the entire landscape of global soccer forever. Meanwhile, Argentinian fans spent the entire tournament crying and complaining that they were not getting any help, which was honestly pathetic, even disgusting, coming from cheap internet influencers and blinded fans who worship Lionel Messi so much they refuse to see the truth. But now, with the actual rules committee openly admitting that the red card did indeed give Argentina a huge helping hand, we can finally prove what we have been saying all along. Argentina was subtly guided along a much easier path, keeping them fresh and prepared for the final matches where they would face much tougher powerhouses, giants like England or even Spain, whom they eventually met in the championship match. To pour even more fuel on the fire, Argentina had one of the lightest travel schedules of any team in the tournament. Because of that, Infantino had already set the stage to guide Messi to the final, aiming for a massive blockbuster game and a perfect Cinderella story where Messi had to win. In the end, Spain managed to grind out a 1-0 win in a highly suspicious final, overshadowed by bizarre refereeing calls on the pitch. Even so, the truth is finally coming to light, and we now see exactly how FIFA plans to manipulate the rules of the game. They already pushed for NFL-style entertainment during matches, and now they want to completely privatize World Cups. People might say everything is already corporate, but there is a much darker reality lurking beneath the surface, and we will break it down in the very next segment. If you are truly enjoying this deep dive, I highly recommend doing yourself a favor and subscribing to the channel right now, my friend, because we have some massive investigations lined up for the second half of the year, tracking every single thread of this massive web of corruption that continues to leave a trail of chaos in its wake. I want you to drop your thoughts in the comments below and leave a like if you want to see us expose more of these hidden soccer scandals. You might argue that the World Cup is already fully privatized, but that is not quite true. Even though the sport has gone completely global, this sport still belongs to the fans, at least in terms of its massive global reach. But even that is highly questionable now, because the 2026 World Cup turned out to be a massive cash grab designed for a select few, a tiny group of wealthy elites, and those desperate folks who practically sold their souls and mortgaged their homes just to afford a single ticket because of the astronomical prices. Yet, the one thing they have not completely privatized is the actual decision-making process behind the tournament, and that is what really matters. But remember, FIFA is the absolute governing body that regulates the sport across the entire planet. Sure, it is technically a private organization focused on running these massive international tournaments, but it still depends entirely on the various regional confederations and national federations scattered across the globe. Generally speaking, it is not a standard private corporation. It operates as a regulatory authority that decides its leadership through votes and democratic processes, if you actually want to look at it that way. Even so, FIFA wields an unbelievable amount of power. They hold more sway than actual sovereign governments. But what happens if they grab even more control? Anyway, the real issue is how a newly leaked official statement from FIFA itself has just exposed what the future of global soccer is actually going to look like. This sudden shift explains the highly suspicious, flagrant favoritism shown to Messi and his national team. That is the missing link exposing the shadow players who desperately want to manipulate the masses using soccer. In fact, a massive investigative report published by the famous London newspaper, The Times, the report reveals that Infantino had this entire scheme mapped out. Months before the tournament, he literally invented a fake FIFA Peace Award just to present it to Donald Trump at the White House. With projected revenues easily soaring past $14 billion just by breaking into the massive American market, Infantino has planned to completely privatize the men's and women's World Cups, alongside the Club World Cup. How? It is actually very simple by turning FIFA into a private corporation with a brand new commercial subsidiary called FIFA Forward Enterprise, or simply FFE. This new entity would handle the sale of shares in both FIFA and the World Cups, and the CEO of this new company would be none other than Infantino himself. He would act as the commissioner of FIFA, mirroring the exact structure used in the NFL, where Commissioner Roger Goodell pulls in a staggering $64 million in annual salary. In other words, FIFA will open its doors to massive investments from private corporations and wealthy businessmen. But here is where things get truly sinister. According to the official FIFA report, this massive corporate transition will only happen on one condition: that Infantino is successfully re-elected in 2027. Under this plan, FFE would run all commercial operations and major event planning, yet FIFA itself would retain absolute exclusive control over FFE, remaining the single governing authority of the entire sport. They would dictate the competitions, the match calendars, and all regulatory decisions. Infantino wants to sell off shares of this newly formed private business. His plan is to allocate 20% directly to all national federations, turning them into direct corporate investors, because they are the ones providing the national teams and clubs that compete in the World Cup. Through this deal, each federation would pocket $20 million annually, while another 20 to 30% of the shares would be sold off to brand new shareholders. The catch is that Infantino already has his buyers lined up, and they are two repulsive entities. The first one is Tribe Capital. This venture firm is owned by none other than Joshua Kushner, who happens to be the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law, whose family has been kept shrouded in darkness due to their history of tax evasion. And the second major investor, who together with the others would put up around $20 billion to buy a massive stake in the company, is none other than the massive, powerful bank that virtually controls Argentina, JP Morgan. Yes, this is the exact same bank that has kept Argentina locked in financial misery, aided by corrupt local politicians who secured high-ranking positions within the firm. JP Morgan. They will act as the financial advisors. Meanwhile, Kushner's firm will be tasked with rallying the necessary investors to essentially buy up ownership of the soccer World Cups. This dark, sinister plot is being carefully wrapped in sweet, sugar-coated promises by the public relations department at FIFA. They claim that all these massive profits will be distributed to the local federations to improve their soccer. But this goes way beyond just treating soccer as a lucrative business, because Infantino first intends to completely take personal ownership of FIFA. Under this corporate structure, the ultimate power to remove him from office would rest solely with a tiny, hand-picked board of directors, a select group of characters that can be easily imposed by himself. Since he will be the absolute owner of the business and an ally to the investors, they themselves will validate his power, and no single national federation will ever have the leverage to take his place or change the rules. Infantino is not just trying to pile up cash, he is hungry for power and influence over many sovereign nations. But then, what does any of this actually have to do with Messi and Argentina? It is actually pretty simple. JP Morgan is the powerhouse behind the investments, the systematic milking, and the looting of Argentina's valuable assets and natural resources, maintaining an incredibly tight relationship with their puppet, Emily. It is safe to say that this banking giant is calling the major shots down there. They desperately wanted Argentina to win the World Cup to keep the public completely distracted with soccer, using the tournament as a massive smokescreen to continue draining the country dry. As for Lionel Messi himself, he was set to become FIFA's ultimate spearhead as the ultimate face of global soccer. And really, why not enjoy the massive perk of becoming a major FIFA shareholder? Just imagine an active player competing on the pitch while simultaneously owning a piece of the entire tournament business. It is a massive conflict of interest. Winning back-to-back world titles would have paved the way for Messi to play in a historic seventh World Cup, and dream that now, thanks to the stunning victory by Spain, looks highly unlikely, though never entirely impossible. But pay close attention to what comes next. Soccer. Right off the bat, we saw during the last tournament that even before gaining absolute unchecked power, Gianni Infantino nearly managed to crown Messi a back-to-back world champion. We also witnessed how easily he can bend soccer's sacred rules to serve his own massive personal ambitions. We previously broke down how this favoritism stemmed from political favors between Infantino and the Argentine Football Association, stretching back to those critical 2016 election votes. And those political favors go much deeper. We are talking about a direct mutual pact with Donald Trump's administration, along with carving out major business deals directly with his family, literally selling the beautiful game to powerful investors tied to shadowy Trump-affiliated businesses, working hand-in-hand with those elite bankers at JP Morgan. Essentially, Infantino is setting himself up as the absolute ruler of global soccer. Meanwhile, national federations will become mere employees, pocketing $20 million annually just to do his bidding during World Cup tournaments, since all the lucrative business deals and power plays will soon be controlled entirely by billionaire private investors. For instance, if only 20% of this corporate entity belongs to the 211 federations, who controls the other 80%? Remember, whoever controls 50% plus one of the shares is the one deciding how and which rules actually change, while taking home the absolute lion's share of the sport's massive profits. Infantino's grand plan is to make FIFA rake in around $10 billion every single year, money he claims he will distribute. We seriously doubt that will ever happen, because once the federations agree, they will inevitably alter the bylaws and regulations to ensure Infantino is handed absolute, lifetime control over the entire sport while pocketing multi-million-dollar annual salaries, all fueled by the raw passion of millions of fans worldwide. However, following that explosive statement from FIFA, the sole governing body standing up to this web of corruption, conflict of interest, and backroom deals is Europe's own UEFA. Releasing a pointed statement regarding the ongoing Types investigation, the powerful European governing body called upon the one authority capable of dragging FIFA to court, demanding the European Commission launch a thorough investigation into the massive heist Infantino is plotting alongside his high-profile American business contacts. The European body stated clearly in their release, UEFA is taking this matter incredibly seriously, and every single national association, along with all major stakeholders, should do the exact same. That means leagues, clubs, players, loyal fans, governments, and anyone who cares about soccer's future. The very soul and governance of soccer are not commercial assets to be traded away, especially with absolutely zero transparency regarding who is actually pocketing the financial profits. None of us owns this game. It is simply not FIFA's property to sell. Following the 2026 World Cup, Infantino dropped his mask entirely, aligning himself perfectly with Donald Trump and the American establishment. And with the massive profits generated by that global tournament, numerous nations walked away satisfied. It is highly likely he will easily win re-election in 2027, triggering this entire corporate takeover. But make no mistake, this was planned years ago, likely before the pandemic, with prominent American NFL investors already buying up ownership stakes in major European clubs. For the moment, the dramatic plot thickens. We will soon expose the dark future awaiting global soccer, an unpredictable path that will likely shift over the coming months. Not on the pitch, not where the ball rolls, but in the dark backrooms, pulling the strings of media control and wielding absolute power from a leather chair over millions of passionate fans who dump billions of dollars into this sport. Now we finally see it, the massive, tangled web of corruption inside FIFA. And all of it is disguised as something beautiful. Look at how they pitch it. We are going to sell off the World Cup to bring in massive cash. Then we will hand more money to CONMEBOL, more money to CONCACAF, more money to your local federation, and eventually, everyone gets a slice. That is pure corruption. They are simply sweetening the deal with these massive payouts, promising steady cash flow, only if the local federations keep handing all their power to Gianni Infantino. And when you look closely, these massive investments are coming directly from Donald Trump and his family. It shows you exactly why everyone was showering Infantino with endless praise right before the tournament kicked off. Like that ridiculous peace prize he basically invented for himself, or those constant visits to the White House to cut shady, behind-the-scenes business deals with the United States. After the tournament ended, so many fans were complaining about the weird match timing, especially those hydration breaks that completely ruined the flow of the game just to squeeze in television commercials, lining the pockets of major networks, and turning the sport into a giant cash machine. But it absolutely destroys the true soul of the beautiful game, and that is exactly where the real danger lies. You hand control to wealthy American investors, and sooner or later, they will steal the entire sport right out from under you. But a lot of people refuse to see that. Looking back, the 2026 World Cup stands out as one of the most corrupt and highly controversial tournaments in football history. Why is that? Because of the massive web of corruption that surrounds the entire Argentine squad, including Lionel Messi himself, and all the shady, underhanded tricks we saw on the pitch, tricks that his most loyal supporters and defenders of Argentina simply refuse to accept or understand. Today, all of this practically confirms exactly what Infantino was trying to pull off, even though Spain ultimately stepped in and ruined their grand plans. But anyway, we are going to dive deeper into this soon because the situation is starting to boil over. It is going to boil over, and the entire scandal is about to explode. Now they will have to find a new way to force Infantino out of office, because there is no doubt anymore he is doing massive damage to the global game. Anyway, if you have made it this far with us, you know the drill. I highly recommend subscribing to the channel to keep up with our raw, unfiltered soccer updates, check out our short videos, and drop a powerful like on this video. And as always, make sure to subscribe to the most independent soccer channel covering the game, not just in Mexico, but maybe even in the entire world. For now, keep your eyes open. We will see you next time. Goodbye.